Hello, my name is Joshua Keith, and this is theburningcoal.com, a website dedicated to God's glory, His grace, and our response to it. Today, we're going to do another Monday motivation, and we're going to talk about being godly. And I think this is really important for us as Christians to focus on this idea of being like God, having godliness as a part of who we are each and every day. Notice what Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4 verse 7. He says, "Have nothing to do with irreverent silly myths, rather train yourself for godliness." And so we see here that this godliness is something that we should be striving for, and in fact it's something that we should train ourselves for. And so when you think about the type of things that you train for, it's the things you want to be good at, the things that you're invested in, whether that's your health, whether that's your job, whether that's one of your favorite hobbies, whatever it is, you're spending focused time so that way you can try and be that thing. And in this case, we want to be godly. Now, what are some ways that we can focus on doing that? Well, first of all, we need to ignore worldliness. And I think that's really important in the context of what Paul is talking about here in First Timothy chapter 4. You know, here he's worried about some false doctrines that are going around, and they can really catch people up. And these in particular false doctrines are focused on the physical realm, and they're trying to make people focus, instead of being godly, instead having this physical righteousness. And what Paul is telling him is that those type of things that they're trying to cut out, this type of asceticism, it's not making them more like God. In fact, because it's focusing on worldliness, it's making them less like God. It's making them think and focus on the world more. And so we want to make sure that we're not falling into that trap, but also we want to make sure that we're not falling into the trap that some people fall into, where that is everything that they think about. And it's not just about false doctrine, but instead they get caught up in the worldliness because that's where their job is, that's where they're spending their time, that's where their hobbies are, that's where their friends are. And so they wind up becoming worldly because everything they pay attention to, everything they focus on, everything they do is worldly. And if we're going to be godly, then it starts with separating ourselves from the world and not focusing so much on the things of this world. Instead, we need to be looking at God. And that's one of the reasons why Bible study is so important to us as Christians, why we need to take time to meditate on God's word, not just read it, but to understand it and to apply it. Because we want to look at the scriptures, and really the scriptures are God trying to tell us about who he is, what his character is. What are the things that makes God mad? What makes him angry? What are the things that makes God happy? What does God enjoy? What does God find pleasure in? If we can't answer those questions, then we're never going to be able to be godly. We're never going to be like God because we don't know who God is. We don't know what God is like. And so the only way you can become God-like is to know who God is. And so it's really important that we spend time getting to know who God is, how he thinks, and what he would do. This is one of the reasons why the Gospels are such a powerful study for us, is because we get to see God in the human realm. We get to see Jesus living as a man doing what God would do. And so when we're wanting to examine God and wanting to be more like God, we should be looking at the Gospels and asking, how can I become more like Jesus? But it's not enough just to study, not enough just to know. We also need to apply it. We need to be focused on living that way, because while we may know who God is and what it takes to be godlike, the world can call to us and the world can tempt us And we may want that more than we want to be godlike. But what Paul tells us is that we need to train ourselves to ignore that worldliness, even when it's hard, even whenever it would be easier just to go along with the flow of what we've always been doing. You train yourself to become godly, so that way you can be with God for all of eternity. I hope this lesson blesses you in your walk in His kingdom.